Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for tuning in to ultimatemotorcycling.com. Here before us we have the 2025 KX250. Now, if you saw our previous review on the 2024 KX450, then you know that this marks a brand new generation. And so now with this year, 2025, the KX250 is kind of following suit by its bigger brother, the KX450. A lot of new things to talk about. So let's go ahead and just start with the engine. Now what Kawi did is they decided to build an engine that has more power from the low to mid-range. According to them, you're gonna get a little bit more grunt, a little bit more power kind of off the bottom end. It'll stay strong through the mid. And even in the top, they still wanna maintain a lot of power up there in the high end of the rev range. So you're not necessarily losing power in the top, but what we're doing, or what they're doing, is they're really focused on the performance gains from the low to mid-range. So we're gonna go out there and test that today at Washougal and see what that's all about. So yeah, and then also too, internally, as far as the engine goes, they incorporated a new piston, and this piston is the exact design that Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki race team uses in their race bikes. So that's really interesting. I think it's really cool to see manufacturers incorporate things that the race teams are doing into their production bikes. It just makes it more exciting for us consumers to kind of almost get, you know, a factory bike off the showroom floor. Not exactly factory, but at least you're getting some parts that the factory race team had developed, and it's just cool. Yeah, so in addition to the engine, of course, you're gonna have to redesign some of the components, like the exhaust system, of course, and the air intake system. The airflow system is pretty cool, completely new air filter design, as well as the air box. The injector system is redesigned. You can take the airbox cover off and take the air filter out with no tools. It's pretty quick. And what's unique about the airflow system now, it's a downdraft intake system. And what they did with the fuel injectors is previously the fuel injector was positioned at the bottom of the airbox, so that the fuel would shoot up and then have to turn down to go into the combustion chamber. Instead, what they did now for 2025 is the fuel injector is now located up at the top. So it's almost essentially, if you look at a diagram, the injectors are shooting straight into the combustion chamber. It just seems like it's more efficient that way. This engine is also basically symmetrical in a sense. The intake and exhaust ports are symmetrically aligned. So as the air and fuel come straight down in the combustion chamber, it's going to exit, the exhaust is going to exit straight out as well. Previously, the air was kind of coming in at an angle, and then the exhaust would leave at an angle. So, you know, maybe if you think about it, it's just really smooth, really streamlined airflow and exhaust flow. And that really just adds to performance and overall efficiency there. But what's happening here is the exhaust system is actually being moved forward by about 50 millimeters. So that's a pretty good amount of mass being moved forward toward the center point of the bike, and it's all being tucked in. It just gives you better, slimmer ergonomics. The resonator is really flat too, just like the KX450, and tucked in really close to that chassis. And I mean, if you look really closely at it, I mean, it's almost further in than the radiators are. So that's really cool. And I think all of that combined with the new piston, the new engine, the intake, and the exhaust systems, it's just gonna make a lot more of that low to mid power while still maintaining power up in the high end. So we're gonna put that to the test today here at Washougal. Quick side note, by the way, this place is beautiful. If you haven't been, I would highly recommend it. 1st of October, so a little chilly this morning, but hopefully it'll warm up a little bit and make for a good day. But the track looks really good. I was just down at the track, pretty big, might be kind of fast. Horsepower hill looks pretty sick. TV certainly doesn't do it justice. It's gonna be interesting. So excited to throw my leg over this thing and see what's going on. Another thing too is now, instead of the coupler system, we have a map selection switch right here at the left side of the handlebars. So the ECU comes with two pre-programmed selections. You have aggressive and standard. So the aggressive is with the blue light on. You hit the map switch to turn the aggressive map on. Blue light off is standard. In the Radiology app, you download the app on your phone. You connect via Bluetooth to the bike. Depending on the conditions, if it's really wet and slick or sandy, and I want to kind of just mellow that out a little bit, you can do that in the Radiology app. Additionally, the KX250 is offering now traction control. It's definitely, I would say, something you'd want to use in, you know, slick, very technical conditions where you might get a lot of wheel spin. If the track is wet, or if it's raining, it's muddy, or traction control could be very helpful. Moving on to the bodywork, really what the idea here is they wanted to just slim up the ergonomics, just make it really, really smooth as far as your body transitions go. So when you're riding your bike and you're throwing your leg out around corners, if you look at this, I mean, this whole shroud here is one piece. From here to here is one solid piece. There's no seams, there's no corners, there's nothing that your gear might get hooked up on. So it's got a really nice, smooth transition here. There's not a hard, I would say, hard corner where the shroud comes out. I've been snagged up before on other bikes, and it's never really fun. So, and then also too, you got a lot of increased surface area too, just for added grip along the bike. That's always helpful. So really appreciate that. This is a Nissan hydraulic clutch system. And, you know, hydraulic clutch, I'm not a lover, but I'm not a hater. You know, I personally prefer a cable clutch because it gives you that connected feel. You just kind of almost feel the vibrations of the motor. You kind of feel where it engages. And I really like that. But Kawi does claim that this particular clutch this clutch lever feel has that type of connection with the engine. So yeah, we'll see how that feels for us. Previously, it was all about KYB. Kawasaki had KYB suspension, but this year they're switching now to Showa. As I mentioned earlier, the shock is different. It's shortened, but still maintains that stroke. As far as the forks go, you know, the fork has a little bit of revalving. They also changed the oil levels in it too. What they did on the 450, and they probably did the same here, is just decrease the friction points inside just to help the suspension travel and work as it's intended. Okay, and on to the braking system on this bike. Now, what was kind of weird about the 2024 KX450 when they launched this new generation is they had a mix match brake set. The front brake system was Brembo and the rear is a Nissan. And that whole decision came really primarily from their test riders. So that was something unique. I mean, the brakes on the 450 are really, really good. It's got a good feel to it. I just think it's, I don't want to say goofy, but you know, it's just unique that it's a mix match set. But here on the 2025 KX250, we're getting a fully matching Nissan front and rear brake system. We asked them why didn't they stick with the Brembo and the Nissan mix match set as they did on the 450, and it really just came down to because of the test riders. Test riders said it felt fine, so no need to change anything there. Okay, so, and yeah, to wrap up all the technical aspects on this thing, one minor thing that I'm really excited about, and thank you, Kawi, for doing this. They're giving us a 110 rear tire. Most all other production 250s are going to be giving us a 100 rear tire. And that is a lot of times because it saves a little bit of weight. It helps the engine rev a little bit freer because there's less turning mass there. But with the 110 rear tire, you're just getting a little bit more added traction, and I'm all about traction. I can care less about weight, to be honest with you. The newer 250s now are super light anyway. I don't care if one is 1 pound or 2 pound lighter. It doesn't really make a difference for me personally. And they equipped this thing with the new Dunlop MX-34s. So good set of tires, and we got a nice beefy 110 on the back. So pretty excited. Today's objective overall is pretty simple. We're gonna go out there, kick the tires and light the fires on this bad boy and see what Washougal has to offer us. So stick around and yeah, let's go ride. Hey, get off my bike.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
All right.
double check here for you.
right, guys, so that pretty much wraps up our day here at Washougal Motocross Park. Washougal is an amazing facility. I would recommend trying to come out here if you can make it. It really is pretty exciting track. So thank you, Washougal, for an amazing day. This was absolutely so much fun. Yeah, and so, I mean, right off the bat, last night Cowie gave us a presentation, went through all the details of what they did, all the re-engineering, the redesigns, what they did for this new generation. The biggest thing really was performance gains down low. So they wanted to give you a little bit more low end to mid instead of having to really rev it out to the high end of the rev range for all that power. It really does have some decent grunt down on the low end of mid range. To be honest, a lot of the parts of the track, the turns aren't very tight. They're kind of, wider turns, so you can keep your momentum going. I just lugged it around in third gear on most of the track. There were obviously a couple of tight sections. You got to downshift to second or whatever just to keep the RPMs up. But I mean, really, this thing's got some good power. But also too, it's really smooth. I would say like it's kind of similar to how the 2024 KX450 delivers its power. It's very linear and very smooth. They did that on the 450 just to keep you confident. I would say on this thing, it's definitely snappy, but it's controllable and smooth, and it was just really fun. It does take a little bit of time to get up to that mid-range power. When it gets to the mid, it does kind of take off, and it still holds that power. And so here at Washougal, the infamous horsepower hill, it's a pretty long, steep hill all the way up. I was pinned in third gear, and it pulled me all the way to the top with no problem at all. Even in the high end of the rev range, there's still plenty of power to pull you all the way through to the top of this hill. Earlier this morning, I was talking about the hydraulic clutch, how personally I'm more of a fan of a cable clutch, only because when hydraulic clutches started coming out, they had more of an on-off feel. But with this Nissan hydraulic system, I mean, I actually really like it. I felt like it did have a nice connected feel to the motor. And today, in the morning especially, the dirt was kind of muddy a little bit. I mean, it was good clumps of mud. It wasn't watery muddy. It was heavy. And so I definitely needed that clutch around some of these corners. It was great. I mean, I was just like one finger on the clutch all day long and no fatigue there. The clutch just stayed strong. I guess you can say I've converted to a hydraulic clutch fan, but yeah, it feels really good. So Cowie, thank you for that. I think, having that connected feel is pretty important. And overall, I mean, the chassis, the bodywork, everything on this, it just feels really, really comfortable. I told the guys after probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 laps I came in, I was just super stoked. And I came in and I told the techs, I was like, man, I don't know if I need any changes. It just feels so good. Now, granted, the track conditions are pretty prime. I mean, like absolutely perfect. The suspension felt really good. It was nice and plush and comfortable. And just overall, the balance of the chassis and the new Showa suspension system. I mean, I feel like this bike, even though it's a Cowie, and Cowies are known for being more of a rear steer, more very, very stable chassis and harder to turn, but they redesigned this whole chassis so that you get more front end feel, you get better, nimble handling. And they certainly accomplished that, I would say. It's almost like when I'm riding, it's wherever my eyes went, the bike would just easily follow. I mean, I was just having a ton of fun. There were some sandy sections here. It stayed really planted and really stable and just straight through these sand sections, even though my rear end was swapping a little bit, but it really just stayed, I feel like I had really good traction, stayed planted, and it was just awesome. Speaking of traction, I think a lot of that has to do, of course, with the Dunlop MX34 tires, and with this 110 rear tire. I can't thank Cowie enough for giving us that 110 right off the showroom floor. I think that's pretty important for a lot of people who are just riding these things for fun and having a good time on the weekends. I think the additional traction is just better. I always make that point. It's just better to have more traction. And again, right straight from your dealer, you get an amazing tire set with the 110 rear. So I will say this though, as far as the suspension goes, it does feel very plush, very planted. It's comfortable. It's not chattery. There's not a whole lot of deflection, especially on the front end. It really just stays planted. I did add a little bit of compression this afternoon when the track got a little bit more beat up and dry. The bumps were pretty choppy. But overall, it was, for the most part, fine. But with that added compression, it just gives you a little bit more control, especially when you're coming into a corner and you're off the gas on the brakes and the nose wants to dive a little bit. I did notice it would kind of get a little twitchy on me. I'd get some head shake coming in the corners, and with a little bit of compression, I think we went in 1 click on the compression and it just made a little bit of difference for me, and that was fine. I didn't notice the front end dipping too much. So Team Kawasaki is just an amazing group of people that built a beautiful bike for us. I mean, the thing just looks, it looks Man, it just looks good. I mean, I would recommend going to your local dealer, just checking it out. Take a look at it, really pay attention to the bodywork. I think a lot of riders, almost every rider is gonna appreciate some, decent looking bodywork, but the way that they designed this transition here, with the shrouds is just so smooth. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel any snag whatsoever on my pants. Yeah, guys, I think that about sums it up for the 2025 KX250. Really stoked about this bike. So, if you guys got any more questions about this thing, whether it's, mechanical, or maybe you got some questions about how it feels, be sure to give us a comment down below. We reply to all comments. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you at the next one.